WWE acquires AAA, and here's why I don't like it. This is the Wrestling Old Head. You have entered the portal of pro wrestling.
What the world is watching.
Okay, so the news coming out of the weekend for WrestleMania 41 isn't really so much the actual matches or some of the events that unfolded. It's actually that the WWE had acquired Mexican promotion AAA from right under our noses, essentially. This news came out of nowhere. I know that there were rumors and innuendo that there would have been a joint card or at least some sort of a working agreement between AAA and the WWE, but this was a full-on acquisition. Antonio Pena and some of the other executives that work for AAA showed up on the pre-show with former alumni from AAA, and they announced this acquisition. Huge acquisition. And I think it's going to take shape in a number of different ways. One of the ways that are the options that have been floated around is that AAA would become essentially NXT Mexico. And in this acquisition, they would use that to funnel developmental talent in and out of that region, whether it be people from NXT or LFG or vice versa, talent from Mexico, from that area, from AAA, coming out to work NXT and the like. The idea with NXT has always been, and I know they had NXT UK for a while there, and the pandemic hit, and they kind of hit the pause button on that, and they haven't really returned to that brand. And I had heard rumor and innuendo a couple of years ago now, it's already been about 2 years, where they were going to do NXT Europe. And I think some of the front runners there, you had William Regal coming back at that time, Tyler Bate, Trent Seven, Pete Dunne, all these guys that they thought that they would use in that area, and then, never came to fruition. So now that the WWE is really showing their hand and showing that they're not just interested in working with these other promotions, but they'll full on buy the companies, that it brings to question a lot of the future for the WWE, and especially for NXT and what they plan on doing. Now, you already have the WWE ID program, which they put these franchise tags essentially on independent wrestlers that they see promise in, and in order to keep them working on their talent and honing their craft, they give them this ID tag, which it includes a stipend. It includes, full coverage on their social media and everything, and gives them an opportunity to, it's tryouts essentially, but it also gives them a chance to continue honing their craft without struggling or getting a second job, a third job, working 9 to 5. They can actually make a decent living and still work their way up to eventually being in NXT and beyond. Okay, so they're cornering the market there on the independent circuit. Now they're buying AAA. And I'm gonna tell you, I have a funny feeling about it. I don't really like it, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I think for AAA, if they had a problem, if they were losing money and everything, this is great for them. I mean, it keeps people in the business. They're getting a paycheck, gets them better coverage. I respect the hell out of every professional wrestler, every executive, and everybody that works in the professional wrestling business. So I'm not mad that they're able to feed their families and that they're still alive in a situation, alive in business sense, in a situation where they could be dead in the water, bankrupt, looking for a way to survive and everything like that. So I don't have a problem with that. I think that is healthy. But what I don't particularly like is the idea that the WWE is doing something that I heard about, but I didn't really witness with Vince McMahon. When Vince McMahon acquired the WWF from his father, and there's a Paul Heyman promo from SmackDown about 10 or 15 years ago that really nails this on the dot. Maybe it's 20 years now, where Heyman is talking to Vince in the ring, and he talked about how Vince took and bought out all these companies, all these regions that he promised that he wouldn't, and then he ended up doing it. And I'm not saying that Triple H or TKO are doing that. I don't know the ins and outs of this acquisition, but it looks very familiar, and I don't think that that's good for business. I think in a competitive market in professional wrestling, competition is healthy. And I know that AAA is never going to be a competitor for the WWE, and I'm not even insinuating that they would be. But what I'm saying is AAA from under the umbrella of the WWE has a certain freedom that they might not have, or they may have, I don't know, but I'm assuming they may not have now under this WWE umbrella. And I just think that, the stars that come from promotions, they have a certain style and they have a certain talent. And if the WWE notices that and they scout that, that's one thing. But to have their hands in the cookie jar and are controlling every region and every wrestler and every company, there's no competition. I just don't see how that is helpful or healthy in professional wrestling and in this climate. If they gobbled up everything and there was nothing left and they run everything, the independent wrestling, the Mexican wrestling, Japanese wrestling, Germany wrestling, British wrestling, Australia wrestling, what is there? How can some company come out from the depths and really give them a run for their money? Because that is the only way that the WWE will continue to be entertaining and will continue to push themselves creatively, is if they have competition. Inner competition, will only get you so far. And that's what I think. And it's something that I feel I saw with WCW and ECW when the WWF/WWE acquired them. They tried to make them separate brands, and they had Paul Heyman run. And at one point, it was like Eric Bischoff was running SmackDown, and Paul Heyman was running Raw. Or maybe I had that switched around. Eric Bischoff was running Raw, and Paul Heyman was running SmackDown, or whatever it was. And it just doesn't work out. Because at the helm, no pun intended, there is always somebody overseeing that and trying to make adjustments and trying to structure things within the scope of the bigger picture of one company, one entity. And I don't feel like that is helpful. Because as a creative, like Paul Heyman, I think ECW thrived because, maybe he had some working agreements with Vince McMahon, but Vince McMahon wasn't backstage. Vince McMahon didn't have his paperclip and, going around and checking off things and, marking off these things or making adjustments here, making adjustments there. Paul Heyman thrived with ECW because he had that freedom. He had the wiggle room, Same with Jim Cornette, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He had the wiggle room, In WCW, they pushed the WWF. There's so many documentaries about this now. They pushed the WWF to get better, to do more reps, to get better creatively, to think outside of the box, to cut it out with the clowns and the dumpster drivers and the hockey players and the stalkers and really hone in and get some attitude. And I just think if the WWE absorbs everything, then they'll never have that again. And there won't be an opportunity for that again. And I think Tony Khan, I think he's been dropping the ball. I really do. Because there's this wide open, I think he's focused too much on what he likes and not what's available. There's so much that's available. And I think that he is a little all over the place. You know, with ECW, we knew what their brand was. With New Japan Pro Wrestling, we know what their brand is. With WCW/NWA, we knew what their brand was. We understood. We can say what they are in a few words or less, right? With AEW, it just seems like they're still looking for their identity. And because of that, casual fans, wrestling fans outside of the quote-unquote sickos, have no clue what AEW is, what the mission statement is. And Tony Khan has an opportunity for All Elite Wrestling to be the alternative, but not the alternative that just throws everything at the wall and it's this big collage and there's no point. To really give you everything and it make sense and it be exciting and it be fresh and it be more hard-edged and gritty and different than the WWE. Because the WWE right now is polished and pretty and organized and just corporate. Everything is corporate. Everything is celebrity. Everything is, I mean, there's a point right now where we might get Gunther against Pat McAfee. Travis Scott just cost Cody Rhodes the world championship. So AEW they can be that alternative where fans are sick. You got fans that were like protesting after John Cena beat Cody Rhodes. They were saying it's the worst match in WrestleMania history. AEW can take that and run with it in their own way. They can be that attitude. They can be that difference, right? They're like one of the last companies alive that can do that. But they're never going to do it if they're trying to be like the WWE. And it's going to be too late after a while. Because you can, if you look down the road, like I've seen reports of the Puerto Rican wrestling company WWC being potentially in the eyes of the WWE looking for an acquisition. Okay. WXW in Germany. Keep your eyes on that company as well. Revolution Pro. There's other British wrestling companies that could be on that radar as well. If the WWE starts acquiring these companies, and God forbid they go to Japan, and they start looking at NJPW, which is going to be, that's a hard one. But what if they start thinking about acquiring Noah? That is when, I'm telling you, WWE starts absorbing companies, there's going to be no competition. And I just don't think that's helpful for professional wrestling as a whole. And with the WWE ID program, with their NIL program, with NXT, with, them working with these other companies, they've got GCW now, they've worked with NWA, they've got all these companies that they work with. There would be no competition, guys. That doesn't scare you guys? That doesn't give you like a little bit of a pause and to go like, wow. I don't know. I'm old guy, so like I'm an old school guy. So when I see this, it's like, it's daunting. It really is. Because then, yeah, WWE would be the brand and you might get your variety, but it's going to be all of WWE, really. Underneath the scope of it all, it'll just be WWE. And I just don't think that's exciting. Just as like I wouldn't be exciting if Marvel bought DC, or if what's another example? It's not fun, man. Competition is fun for me. I like competition. I think it brings out the best in people. I think it can get a little extreme sometimes and it can be a little much, but overall, I think it helps. And I think it pushes people. I mean, I've seen some of the best wrestling promos, some of the best wrestling matches, some of the best bell-to-bell pay-per-views through competition. And that's all I want to see. That's it. I think it's better for the business. But that's how I grew up in the business. That's how I grew up watching the business, is through the competition. So that's just my thoughts on it. I don't think it's a good idea. But who the fuck am I, right? And I think, and like I said before at the beginning of this video, when it comes to, keeping these wrestlers and these executives and these road agents and these referees and these ring announcers getting their paychecks and feeding their family, I'm all for that. But to bring the best out of the business, to keep it thriving and keep it creatively inspired, I really think competition is the best in that regard. So what do you guys think about this WWE acquisition of the AAA in Mexico? What are your thoughts on it overall? Am I thinking too deep about this? Should I just enjoy it for what it is? You guys I'll take any comments you want. I don't care. I'm thick-skinned, man. I can handle it. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, this is the Wrestling Old Head in the portal of pro wrestling. Stay tuned for more.